Welcome to the EMAS panel, and apologies for this time, which seems to be somewhat awkward to everyone, but it's the best we could do to sort of fit everyone in and have everyone be available. So my name is Michael Winikoff, and I'm moderating this panel. And I just want to quickly tell you about what the panel is going to be about, who the panelists are and how it will work, and then I'll sort of hand over to the panelists. So EMAS has now, this is the 10th EMAS. The first EMAS ran in 2013 and I was one of the co-chairs, and it was a merger of three existing events. AOSC, Agent Oriented Software Engineering, which ran from 2000, so it actually predates the EMAS merged conference. DOLT, Declarative Agent Languages and Technologies, which ran from 2003, so it started in Melbourne at that EMAS, and PROMAS, Programming Multi-Agent Systems, which also started in 2003. So given that this is the 10th year of EMAS, we felt that it was a good time to have a panel that was looking backwards and also looking forwards. So the title of the panel is 10 Years of EMAS, Looking Backwards and Looking Forwards. And to help us do that, we have three panelists, all of whom are long-standing members of the EMAS and its predecessor communities. So we have Jorge Gómez-Sanz, who is an associate professor at Universidad Complutense de Madrid, and he's published, I guess you could say, is more of an AOSC person, although also doing some programming stuff. I think his first paper in this area was back in AOSC in 2001, and many more AOSC and also PROMAS and EMAS papers. And he's perhaps best known for his work on the ingenious methodology. Alessandro Ricci from Università di Bologna, I would say more of a PROMAS person, and he's also known for his links with sort of other programming communities, perhaps best known for being the CA in Giacomo, Carthago, and he's published PROMAS going back to at least 2007, but also AOSC and of course EMAS. And he was co-chair of EMAS in 2017 and 2018. And Pınar Yolum, who is at Universiteit Utrecht, and she's more of a sort of DOLT person, published back DOLT 2004 and EMAS and other venues. Perhaps best known for her early work on commitment machines, but also on work on privacy and trust. So we have three panelists, all associate professors, and all with different backgrounds. So more AOSC, more PROMAS, more DOLT. So how will this panel work? So we have specific questions, which I'll post to chat shortly, which are firstly, how has the EMAS research changed over the past decade, and what has not changed? What has remained constant? What is the biggest non-research challenge for the EMAS community? Because EMAS is not just a research area, it's also a community of people. And finally, the most open-ended question, what's coming up? What is the future of EMAS? So I will give each of the panelists 5 minutes maximum for an opening statement, and then we'll circle around and give each panelist up to 2 minutes to respond to what the other panelists have said, if they want to, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Now, I don't think MS Teams, I'm used to Zoom more, I don't think MS Teams has a raise hand feature, so if you want to sort of take the microphone, please post something in the chat and I'll try and keep an eye on and work through that in the order. So I'll put, yes.
It does have a raise hand feature. People have been using it.
I can see that. Excellent. Thank you. And that's under reactions. Okay, cool. So raise your hand then, and I will see that and sort of call on people in order. So to be a bit different, I thought we might do reverse alphabetical order rather than the usual alphabetical order. We didn't agree on this beforehand, so apologies. So I'll hand over to Pınar and then Jorge and then Alessandro finally. So Pınar, over to you, and I'll post the questions in the chat.
Okay, good. Let's see. I'll try to do my timing here. Yes, okay. So I'll start with the first question. How has EMAS research changed over the past and has remained constant? So just to refresh my memory on this and to give a sort of a bit of a systematic answer to this question, I went through a bit of the past proceedings to see what is there, and I sort of played a game with myself to see if I could identify a certain year's proceedings, the year that proceedings came out, whether I would know whether it's 2014 or 18 or 19, just looking at the topics, and it wasn't easy, at least for me. And my general first take on that was the topics have not changed all that much. And by saying that, I don't mean that we've been doing the same things over and over, but I think what we have done is that in the initial years, the topics of architecture, interaction, testing, simulation, usability, they were all very much like there, but we had the initial layers, and the coming years have always built on top of it, and I think this is a very healthy way of going about it. So, for example, with architecture, the initial years were more on coming up with constructs, what are beliefs, plans, how do they relate to each other, what are their life cycles, what agent-based programming languages do we have, how do we sort of provide these constructs as first-class citizens in these languages, what are the multi-agent programming paradigms, etc. So like, but then like the coming years, we started looking at things like what is fault tolerance, what is robustness, like how do we make these, is this something that we all sort of add to the architecture, or is it something that we have to think and come as a new architecture? And that kind of like those ideas also, I could see that also with the interaction, like the initial years on the works on protocols, for example, what are protocol specifications, what are their properties? We had the initial ideas of autonomy, flexibility, etc. with the protocols, but the following years built on top of that, like we looked at things like distributed execution. How do we sort of realize this? What are interaction patterns? What is robustness in terms of the interaction? Same, I would say, in some sense for testing. So the initial years were let's have like model checking, things we know and apply them to multi-agent systems and our engineering of them. But the following years, like what if the agents learn? What if there's an emergent behavior? How do we sort of test these systems? And so like I could see this idea going with the simulation as well. Initial, again, years, simulation frameworks, but the later years more like how do we integrate big data? How do we like have large scale simulations, like with COVID data, for example? How do we evaluate that this is a good simulation? What I thought was less not present in the beginning, but more later on, is more focus on humans. So I think the initial years, the idea was more on just having multi-agent systems, and the later years we had a more focus on say socio-technical systems, and where there are humans and other stakeholders, and we started worrying about their place in this engineering as well. Like the last 2-3 years, a bit more focus on how do we explain what we build, what is privacy respecting, let's say multi-agent systems, what are like trustworthy multi-agent systems. I think those were also became important in the last years. And what I see as the biggest non-research challenge for EMAS community is that I think industry is still to a large extent centralized, and they're not very much looking for autonomy. So this is a very subjective opinion, obviously, but the reason I'm saying this is that some of the work that we do does not really immediately find a place in industry. And this is like, we care about this because if the industry doesn't care, you know, like recently industry is the main funding agency for a lot of research. When the industry doesn't care about it, we don't have enough funds to do more research in this area. I don't know about you, but for example, I find it difficult to pitch some of these ideas to my students. They'd rather do their thesis in another field. So like if we can't educate the next generation, let's say researchers, then it's difficult. And I know that I'm like over time, but I'll just say one more minute, Michael, and then I'm done. And the future of EMAS, I think, is human-centered. So I think the next years we'll see more abstractions that pertain to like the trustworthiness, fairness, ethics, responsibility, transparency. And I think we should see more applications that touch people's lives, ideally with use cases that we all sort of adhere to, with data sets that we can own up to and sort of commonly use among each other, and applying it to industry in IoT applications, microservices, and that kind of mainstream things that are sort of came up recently or coming up now. And thank you.
Thank you, Pınar. And Jorge, over to you. I'll sort of give you sort of 2 minutes, 1 minute, and stop, okay? You're muted.
I have two buttons for mute, so well, never mind. Yeah, I agree with Pınar about the progress in topics. I think that every technical or technological area moves with the hype. I mean, we have seen 2 presentations about digital twins, about IoT, and certainly these 2 are very hot topics right now, but it's not recent news. I remember when the topic was XML, and we all did agents processing XML, if you remember back in the days. So how does EMAS research has changed along these years? In terms of the engineering, I must say that engineering is less and less present each edition. I was checking quickly before the meeting the presence of papers related with engineering, just checking the titles. And in 2013, we had 8 papers about engineering from a total of 19. But in 2021, we have 3 from a total of 21. And in 2022, 2 about a total of 15. So for 2022, I'm not using the post proceedings, which can be increased with 1 or 2 papers. But the thing is that engineering is on the decline, I think, and I wonder why. Because I think that the problem is something that happens back in the days too. I remember a paper that said that the problem of agent researchers is that they don't have a problem. So we try to invent new things, try to look at the reality, say, look, if you do this with agents, it will be easier. But then we try to explain other person how it works. You can just by yourself, by the previous sessions, it takes a lot of effort to introduce the concept of how can this be better than the others. So in a world that is owned by JavaScript and Java 2 Enterprise Edition, what can we do with agents? I mean, honestly, this year has proven that we have not provided a successful framework that invite others to use it. But is the future dark? I don't think so. I was writing down some ideas for the future. One thing that has to be clear is that the EMAS cannot compete with AMAS. And the more you look like AMAS, the harder it is to get quality production. What I think, it seems to me that the decline of engineering content is followed by an increase with more formal or more computer science content. So in that sense, it's great, but the engineering is one of the roots, as Michael has pointed out before. So it is very important to keep alive this way of thinking as a system as a whole, combination of system. I'm not talking only about methodologies. There is a huge overlapping between the topics with the three communities, and that's why we were able to fusion them. You cannot talk about programming without talking about engineering, and vice versa. For instance, I live from my opinion, but for EMAS, what I foresee in the future. First, I think it's positive that at this time of the day, we are 35 people. I don't remember any edition of EMAS having so many people before. So I think it's good news. The digital format favor us. And it's something that I will promote to have even more frequent sessions like this. Why limit ourselves to 1 edition by a year? Also changing the topic or the focus of EMAS. Rather than doing presentations and discussions, why not be a more conventional workshop in the sense of doing things? Let's get together like we did in DAX2 seminars, all the people together working and producing things. I think that the spirit of DAX2 seminar was very positive. And I think it could be brought to EMAS as well, and not competing in terms, I have better proceedings, I have this journal, this special issue, please bring it here, because I don't think we can compete. We can be a more friendly place to present your results and share things. And I'm concluding because I have the counter, I have 40 seconds. One pending thing here is indexing and citing impact. If we pursue the academic perspective and not the industrial one, this is something of concern, because we need to make this workshop attractive. So either you make it attractive by doing things, practical things, or you make it attractive by showing people that it's worth publishing here, because you got good feedback and you have good publishing channels. And I stop. Thank you. 9 seconds missing. Okay.
Thank you. Excellent. And Alessandro.
Okay, can I share the screen or something like that? Is it possible? Or I think so. Yes.
Try.
I can.
Yep.
You see it?
Yep.
It's working. So, you know, I mean, I fully agree with Jorge and Pınar. They said, they did really better job than what I was doing. You are seeing me? You see the screen, right?
We see your
white.
presentation. Yeah, it's a blank
page.
It's
white. Right, yeah, it's
okay.
white. But the point was that I was strongly in difficulty because I trying to go back and see all the things that have been already said. For instance, there was recently also this kind of papers in which we devised a roadmap. I mean, for me, it was, I tried to have a perspective, a more, let's say, a thermodynamic perspective, because I realized that, from my opinion, I mean, EMAS in these 10 years achieved a kind of an equilibrium, a steady state that is, from my perspective, if I see all the papers that been, I mean, Pınar has been really precise, really understanding the differences. But from my perspective, I saw that in the last decade, there is a kind of equilibrium in terms of number of papers submitted, contribution also for EMAS, the themes and the topics, that in a way there was not really an extraordinary news from the previous decade. So for me, it's like to say that EMAS achieved a kind of a steady state. So also the number of papers we have, it's in that way, I guess, here bringing the numbers. The impact on EMAS is not really huge, again, still keeping not so huge. So, and that was a problem that we discussed so many times also, how well industry, how to engage out. So back to the thing. So at the same time, I would say that the last decade witnessed quite strong, extraordinary energy everywhere, in terms of we are all witnessing something that could be disappointing, but not disappointing, depends on the point of view, a new AI spring. We talk about software 2.0. I mean, the point of revising, what does it mean engineering, integrating with the learning on the AI is really a topmost issue to consider. So it is a new energy, but the new energy come also from digital transformation. So Industry 4.0, digital twin are just one of the many points that could be devised over there about this kind of new energy. So my point was, what does personally I saw I put the questions about what does it mean then in this new era, programming, for instance, agent programming. Is it make sense talking about agent programming, or does it make sense to talk about engineering mass in the cognitive era? And I guess so, as Jorge said, absolutely. But the point, so for me, is looking to the future. I think that we achieved a steady state, so we have to move out to this state, not going on, because EMAS did, I mean, keeping EMAS, but EMAS did a wonderful job. Now we need to embrace new energy to move out from this steady state. How? So I would say that it would be really interesting, from my perspective, to get energy by interaction with the other community. And so putting more effort in building a community, not for just single papers for the end for the workshop, but during the year. So let's see, I would propose to consider as a new era for EMAS, to consider as a glue during the whole year, so that the event at the end of the day, the workshop, will be a moment to show up each other what has been done also during the year. So not only, as Jorge said, not only about collecting papers to be presented, but sharing projects, sharing technologies, having a much more also practical attitude, and exploiting the opportunity of the workshop to meet all together and discuss. Maybe also including then also satellite events, let's say, just to say, such as the one in Dutch or other events were really brilliant in creating interaction with people. So I'm stopping here just to say that we need new energy in order to shake and move on.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I'll go back to Pınar. Do you want to add anything in 2 minutes? You don't have to.
Can I respond?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Alessandro, could you be still sharing your screen?
Yeah, let's try that. That's that. When
No. I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'm stopping the screen, right?
Yeah, if you could do that, I think that will help.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Because I'm seeing multiple of myself, and even one is too many. Yeah, so I mean, so I totally agree with both of you, I think, on sort of reaching out to other communities. I think both of you mentioned it in some ways, and what I think one way of doing that is not only keeping in touch with each other, but sort of trying to address some of the questions that other people are worrying about outside our community. And so, for example, we need to use more of their use cases. We need to use more of their data sets, or like we need to be able to identify what is it with their problems that we think is not enough, so that we need to do it in an agent-based manner or through multi-agent systems. And I think this is one of the, I mean, I think we're not reaching out enough, but also we're not taking enough into ourselves to process this. So like we're a bit sort of secluded in ourselves, and like we're following each other, I guess, but like we're not making ourselves accessible to them either. Just wanted to say that.
Cool, thank you. Jorge, do you want to add anything up to 2 minutes?
Yeah, let me start a counter. Yeah, what to do? First of all, some answers to Alessandro's statements. Agents, I don't think that are artificial intelligence anymore. I mean, at the time we pushed about the agents as a container for artificial intelligence. This is something that was even present in modern artificial intelligence books like Russell Norvig, that I have used in my lessons as well. So, but if you read that book, you will see that none of our technologies are finally used. So at the end, they use other constructions like state machines or neural networks or rule-based system that we also try to bring to our to our area. We say, look, we know how to program rule-based system. It's not how you do. It's better to use goes and to use plus and all this kind of stuff. But the truth is that it's very difficult to teach others to do this. And I think that we have not the metaphors for people, the useful metaphors, and we are not alone here, but others are luckier. For instance, quantum computing. Quantum computing is based on physical events that are very, very, very hard to understand. Nevertheless, everybody puts thousands of millions of euros or dollars in every research about quantum computing, and they have not solved any problem, just for the future possibility of solve them. So I think that we have technology here, but we don't have the problems. We are a lot of people with a lot of tools without people with problems. And when somebody with problems appears, we don't follow this person. We saw some use case that I cannot be reproduced elsewhere. I invite you to show me a number or important number of frameworks or examples, case studies that I can download and learn from them. I know they are online, but my point. Okay, the counter is 0, but just 5 seconds. I invite you to look for repositories of use cases. This something has been claimed for a long time in this community and other communities, even larger link, that can teach others how to program or to solve problems. We are able to produce one-time programs that are work for a specific case, programs that are very difficult to install, are very difficult to execute, and that very difficult for others to re-engineer or modify or learn things. This is a problem we have not solved yet.
Okay, and Alessandro, do you want to add anything or respond to?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, actually, I don't agree too much with you, Jorge. I mean, I think that fully share the idea of Kern or also of Brian Logan's when they say in mine invited, they will kicking, pushing the ideas of trying to be bold in considering engineering for the most critical aspect of agency and multi-agent systems, not only the one that are nearest to the things that. So I still believe that instead we need to fully embrace AI and distribute AI, but doing engineering over there. And nowadays it's time for that, because what they need really, that's a huge, everywhere it is a kind of a fight between AI and software engineering. Because as soon as, and you know it, not only about machine learning and whatever. So from my perspective, it's really the wonderful time in order to show up your metaphor and your architecture, cognitive architecture. But the point is, I fully agree with Pınar, we need to put, from my perspective, much more effort during the year in order to create content, create links with other community, and work during the year in order to create I would say, in domain-driven design, a ubiquitous language in the sense of creating a shared way to talk about the things, to share things, and to get new energy from the other community, energy in terms of people, use cases, and whatever, and also give our energy. But we need to open the community. As soon as, if we go on and say, look, yeah, we have that, that's better, you know, if they would apply my kind of technology, it would be better. We don't go anywhere. We need to really open the stuff, but it means, from my perspective, huge work, because it means you don't wake up at the end. You need to have a way to construct during the year, to work together and create an incremental way to set up the community. Sorry, maybe I was a little bit long.
All good. Okay, so we've taken a little bit less than half the time, which is great. We've had a lot of really good discussion, good positions, somewhat provocative statements, I hope, a little bit of disagreement even. And I'll open it up now to everyone else who's here. So please raise your hand virtually, and feel free to jump in with agreements, disagreements, new thoughts, or questions. And I'll give people a little bit of time to sort of find the right button. Yeah, Yves.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what Alessandro said, especially in his last comments. It seemed to me that, you know, I mean, our field is evolving quite rapidly, and we have to kind of integrate new people that go with this evolution in order to
Keyboard, please.
I don't know what this noise is.
Yeah, it's a keyboard. I think it's Michael.
Okay. So in particular, well, one field I would mention is reinforcement learning, and you know, people in, you know, that do planning now, you know, there's a good chunk of paper in the planning conference that are about reinforcement learning. So, and this really, you know, is, I think, part of the problem that we're dealing with. We want to engineer, you know, multi-agent system, and in many cases, this is going to be done by using, you know, machine learning technique. And so it seemed to me that we have to think about how to incorporate this and you know, this is an area that there's a lot of enthusiasm, and so we can get more people to join, participate in the community. I think another point too is that I think all workshops have tended to become less, attractive in terms of publication venues and simply because there's so many conferences these days, people are always chasing the last conference deadline. So, but of course, it's a good place to get together. And as Alessandro was suggesting, if there were some, I mean, we have a website for EMAS, and if this could be, used to maintain an interaction between people, between conferences, this would be, I don't see how much better we could do, Anyway, that's my point.
Thank you. Rim.
All right, so I have a few comments here related to the separation between software engineering and AI. I'm kind of a bit surprised about this because here, at least in the US, in our software engineering curriculum, AI is mandatory for all software engineering students. And actually, it's not just AI. Now we're moving towards security being also a required topic for software engineering students. So we no longer separate between AI. Actually, every time we go to meetings where we have people saying, oh, we're using this AI, this smart system, everybody looks at them. It's like, is there anything in this world that is no longer smart? So it's over, it's finished. No, the separation is so much 20th century. It is expected that everything be smart. So if you are a software engineer in the 21st century, you have to have a minimum knowledge in AI to be able to be productive and come up with useful systems. The second point was about, I think, Jorge's comment about, we have a lot of tools, we have a lot of results, but no one is coming to us and sharing problems with us. I fully disagree. First of all, why is it that we would be waiting for people to come and present to us their problems? We should be going after the problems. And let me tell you, this is a golden age for multi-agent systems. The reason why it is a golden age, and again, I'm talking from the US perspective, we see so many initiatives related to smart cities. It's popping in all directions. There is a competition between cities here in the United States as to who's going to be the most advanced with smart technologies. Well, at the core of the smart city projects are distributed smart systems, right? And collaborative systems. And guess what? That is like the perfect type of application for multi-agent systems. Now, of course, there's a variety of topics, and depending on whatever of interest to people, each one of us can focus on something and kind of contribute. But sitting there in our corners, in our offices, and expecting that the municipality is going to come and knock at our door and tell us, hey, please help us solve this, it's not going to happen. We have to make the effort. We have to go. We have to. Our experience is that we started very small. We had to prove ourselves. But once you prove yourselves, that's it. You are in the circle, and then projects keep coming and coming. So there is really an opportunity for this field to move to the next level now before it's too late. And with respect to the comments about the structure of the workshop, I can only agree that it would be a lot more useful for the community, in addition to having the paper presentations, because we have to kind of help our students get their initial publications and encourage them in that respect. We should also open the workshop to a more relaxed type of setting where people can just share their experiences, share their systems without any specific review or anything like this. I would have loved, and I'm seeing this presentation about digital twins. I wish I could have demoed a few things to Stefano and Hussein just to give them an idea about what we have done and what worked, and allow them to kind of, target some issues that are specifically of interest to them, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel. And I'm sure that there are many, many other people who have done a lot, and I think there is a lack of understanding and knowledge of what researchers have produced, and because we don't even have a website where the systems are uploaded and shared with the community, it makes it difficult for young researchers to kind of have a good understanding of the state of the art. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jorge, I think you were next, and then Stefano. You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, well, I think that when I say that agents are not artificial intelligence, what I mean is that at a time, if you were not doing agents, you were not doing AI. This is not invented by me. This is something that was said at a time. I think that getting to the tail of AI to follow this trail of success in neural networks or so is something we can do. But where are the agents? If mentioned the reinforced learning, where are the agents? I mean, there are useful abstractions, but in terms of programming engineering, which is what I'm talking about, they are not there. They are not computational entities that are there. There may be conceptual data somewhere. This may be useful for developing a paper, but to go to industry and solve problems in a daily basis is something that I think that we are not doing, and it's something that is not new. Salila was mentioning that we shouldn't stay in our offices. We should look for problems. If Michael remembers this at the time, Agent League Times, again, this is something, again, that was said at the time. I'm talking about 2004. Since that time, I think this motto, this incentive to new researchers, go and look for problems, is something that we have tried. But why isn't there some trend in the new generation of programmers that consider agent technology as an alternative? Let me read some of the goals of Agent Link projects. We were given millions of euros to promote this technology, to facilitate improvement in the quality profile and industrial relevance of European research in the area of agent-based computer systems, and draw in relevant prior work from related areas and disciplines. I mean, this goal exists since 2004. Why we don't have something already? We have surveys. I've written myself a lot of surveys. You surely have written also a number of surveys yourselves. I mean, we have recollected a lot of things, but that's not how the software industry works. So Salila was mentioning smart cities and IoT. Precisely, I'm in the board of IoT initiative activities board from the IEEE, which is a consortium of 5 relevant IEEE societies that works on IoT. There are no mentions of agent technology there. I also work in smart grids, which is an area, if you look for description, that mentions explicitly, look, agents are relevant here. But if you look for the literature, it's very difficult to find the actual concept that we work on in the libraries and the frameworks. And I'm pointing this not in terms of, look, this is going to fail. I'm pointing this as an example of what we are saying today was said 22 years ago. So we should try different. So maybe something that we did in the past didn't work. I will push for trying something different. My proposal is, let's try to solve these problems in this workshop. Let's bring people from social sciences. Let's bring people from health sciences. I myself have been gone to this kind of conferences looking for these problems. And at the end, what matters is to solve the problem. And it doesn't matter the technology. This is a very basic engineering principle. So I'd like the agents to be my main tool. At the moment, it's not. It's one of the tools. I'm not happy it is, but we shouldn't say that we are not computing with other tools. We are. In fact, we're saying that ours is better because in technology, you use what suits you the best. not what somebody has told you. And if you look for Twitter communities of programmers in front-end programming, back-end programming, you see exactly this kind of attitude. Let's look for things that work and where I have to invest little effort.
Okay, Stefano, I think you were next, and then Amit.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say two quick things from my perspective, maybe younger, maybe with less expertise. I agree with Rim that there are many things that seem to be a golden age for the agents. For instance, when I hear about explainable AI, I can't remember if it was in a paper or in a conference, but somebody said, if you want something explainable, why are not using an agent? And that's, I mean, that was a good answer in my point of view. And also, for some of my work related to a project, I had some knowledge about machine learning, this kind of research efforts and industrial efforts in building machine learning pipelines to reuse machine learning pipelines, AutoML, the idea of sharing already built machine learning models. All these and I was a bit puzzled because in my perspective, these are all engineering problems that the multi-agent system community solved decades ago. I mean, how to encapsulate something in a reusable component was something like fancy in this research area, whereas in the multi-agent system community is already a solved engineering problem. So for this, I agree with Rim. There are many things that seemingly can be attacked by agent-oriented stuff. A bit, I must say, I also agree with Jorge in the fact that in the past something went wrong somewhere, because if there are so many good reasons for using agents, but not many people are using them, maybe something went wrong. But I don't know what. Maybe I'm too young, or I don't know, but I don't know what.
Okay, and Amit.
Yeah, thanks for all the nice points. I think, yeah, there's a lot of substance in what the panelists have said and what the other people have said as well. I just like to say two things. I think there is something fundamental we have to offer that no other computing field has to offer, and that is the notion of communication meaning. So communication semantics has a rich history in AI, and the multi-agent systems community has kept that field alive. And I think meaning goes to the heart of computing. It goes to the heart of concurrency, to the heart of distribution. So I discovered a few years ago that people in distributed systems actually don't like TCP. They don't like TCP because it imposes a model upon the application. And the way they want to get rid of TCP, for example, to be able to build applications over UDP, which would of course provide performance benefits, but would actually also open up decision making at the application level. That would be through some encoding of meaning. What is the application semantics? And that is where we've made a lot of progress. Application semantics via norms, commitments, interaction protocols. So agents for me are not anything intelligent. You know, we can define agents as we want. We are free to do that. But for me, they are the endpoints of interaction. And it is the modeling of the interaction that gives loose coupling, for example, because the interaction gives you a basis for implementing the system. Right. So I think meaning is fundamental, and it goes to the heart of computing. And we have plenty of fundamental stuff to offer over there, richer than anything anybody has imagined. And about industrial relevance, it's true. I think the points Pınar and Jorge made are both true, that industry is not looking for interaction protocols, autonomy in general, and engineering is on the decline in EMAS. I think I agree, but I think there is hope. So people in industry are now interested in microservices. They want to take a monolithic application and divide it up into autonomous components that interact via messaging. What is that? That is a multi-agent system. what they need is protocols so that they don't build a tightly coupled application from microservices. They're not doing protocols right now. They're just doing PubSub and leaving all the implementation inside the agents, so they become tightly coupled. So I think we have a lot to offer. IoT for it and is another decentralized, fundamentally decentralized paradigm. We have a lot to offer to industry. Now, whether our ideas get taken up is another question, but I have no doubt we have plenty to offer.
Okay, Simon, then Alessandro.
Hi, people. Thanks a bunch. So I'm a bit new to this community, right? I only started with agents of like 4 years ago or so. What has been striking me, adding on top of what both Stefano said before and the points that Alessandro brought up, but also adding to Amit's comments, I do absolutely. I mean, I'm a distributed systems person, right? I also think that this idea of having better distributed autonomy in a distributed, more decentralized system, right? The web is also moving towards more decentralization. I also think that this is a good space to fill for agents. I have a question to the panel then, to whoever wants to answer, or maybe you have a common answer even. Why is computer-human interaction not being considered more in this community? Because to me, agents might be the thing that is needed to enable more efficient communication between black box end-to-end machine learning systems. I hope you see what I'm trying to compartmentalize over here on the one hand side, and humans on the other hand side. Agents managing other AIs. Do you see what I mean? Is this interesting, or is this out of scope? Or what is it?
Well, this is a question, but I have talked a lot. I don't know if Alessandro or others.
Go on. I mean, for me, go on, Jorge.
Yeah,
with Simon, we discussed it today together too.
very simple. And just to leave the word to Pınar if she wants to point out anything. HCI also was a matter of research in the agent community in the beginning. They were called intelligent interface agents, and I remember there were a strong connection between the routines that they allow us to learn from what the user was doing, learn by example, looking over the shoulder. I remember Patty Miles working on this, which at the time was the top of this kind of work. But at some point, this research, I don't know why, but again, disappeared. People are still working on this. I think that people are working today into conversational agents, which is very interesting. And you have a lot of frameworks to do this. And but the thing about conversational agents is if you are able to make these agents interact with the interface, always is this condition. You have to have an interface somewhere that can be operated or interfered or affected by whatever the agent says, and you need a technology to code all the knowledge. And for instance, Microsoft has Microsoft Power Virtual Agents. This is the name of the technology of Microsoft to program bots, which is, programming, processing natural language is another of the new hypes. And in that way, I think it's very promising, the result that have been obtained. But this line of research that I thought it was incredibly useful, which is let's learn how to make these applications easier to use for our users, is very missing. And today we have the technology that enable a deeper control of this kind of interfaces, like web interfaces. JavaScript and the frameworks that we have today allows us to create or integrate a lot of modules to interact with the interface in a way that in the past was achieved only by very clever hacking of the application. There were very clever solutions at the time, but today they are not needed. But I don't know why we have less HCI in the sense of intelligent interface agents that I was referring to.
Okay, Alessandro, then Babak, then Pınar.
Yeah, well, about the point of Simon, from my perspective, I fully agree also with Pınar. I mean, we are entering strongly in a human-centered AI and whatever kind of. So I'm pretty sure that there will be a huge amount of developments in terms of agents and multi-agent system that need to, I mean, social technical stuff interacting with humans and whatever. But just I would like to add something about the discussion that did also Amit. And you know, guys, we are doing the same discussion in a way since a decade. That's normal. Of course, we know that the semantics and the distributed agents could do. The point is, how do we move on? And the point is, for me, I hope that there is also André Chortea here, because he taught me a lot of things. I mean, I guess that we are able to move on if we are able to create context in which really people from different community meet together and try to discuss, interact. It is difficult, it is, but then we move on. It is not, I mean, so this is why I see a wonderful future for, I fully agree also with the RIM, I mean, or putting together AI plus SA, software engineering plus distributed system, of course, but creating the opportunities for, and so making effort to create a way in which you put people all together to discuss. For instance, André organized with also Simon, a DAX tool in which Web of Things guys talk with semantic web guys and multi-agent system guys. And I think that it was really strong improvement. And so that's that kind of interaction that, from my perspective, make it possible to move on towards new decade. Okay.
Babak?
Yes, I'd just like to contribute a little bit of my own experience, you know, the past 20 years, basically, and where my own work from more than 20 years ago was basically about interface agents. So, what I've seen, the evolution, at least in my career, has been that there's basically three main thrusts that I felt were useful to me in the multi-agent systems community. And one was adaptability, one was decentralization, and the other one was autonomy. And so in the beginning, it was the adaptability aspects that were interesting to me. So again, Patty Mays's interface agents and so on, which in my case, I applied to various domains, or at the time I could find some data to apply it to. So that area is still very much active. It's just not tackled in our community anymore. So people who do learning from demonstration, for example, they're continuing to do exactly that. Any work on imitation, it's all been folded into machine learning. So this work exists. It's just the DNA is somewhere else. It's not in our community. The same thing happened with decentralization. So I got interested in the early days of peer-to-peer work. I kind of followed that because there was that notion of decentralization, which we weren't seeing so much as initially we thought in the classical traditional web, but rather in those kind of peer-to-peer systems. And today the DNA exists still, maybe in blockchains and things like that. So again, some of those ideas, some of the lessons we learned about how do we build things that are resilient to not having a central authority, those ideas are still there, whether they're using early technology from multi-agent domain, that is definitely perhaps an area of weakness. The third one is the more recent one, and so that's why I've kind of reappeared in this community the past 2-3 years, is autonomy. And in this case, and this is where I have the most optimism, is that while in the early days maybe we thought agents would be roaming the internet, I think now we can see agents roaming the world physically embodied by robotics. And so I found, actually, I was very surprised and pleased to find funding to use agent technology in the robotics domain. And it was at the right time, because now we do have JSON or Giacomo in general. We have fairly mature programming languages and toolkits that we can use and adapt to robotics. And this gives us some very interesting challenges to find out, well, what are the shortcomings and what do we need to add? And it's kind of full circle now, because to address something that was mentioned just maybe a few minutes ago, it is complementary potentially with machine learning. Yes, at the lower layer of robotics, you're going to see perhaps, pattern recognition and the kind of machine learning that we see these days. We also see reinforcement learning at the control system level. But on top of that, we can build the layer that is explainable and that can work in a complementary manner with those other technologies.
Thank you, Pınar. And if I can ask people to try and keep their comments brief, we've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, so I'll just say something short on two things that have been said. One was I think Amit said that IoT is a great area to apply some of these ideas, and I want to sort of echo that. And I think that community is also very sort of receptive to our ideas, and I want to sort of tie that up to Simon's questions on HCI. So, for example, HCI people, if you like in the recent proceedings of Kai, for example, you could see them evaluating whether humans would be appreciative of IoT software. So they don't call it agents. I mean, sometimes they call it agents, sometimes they don't, but that's okay, I think. But they're questioning people, do you want a software that is going to work autonomously for you? Do you want automation or like, I mean, they make distinctions on some of the like autonomy concepts. And I think this is a good point for us to sort of tie that to that community. So, for example, I've been doing research on privacy and building personal assistants that can help people preserve their privacy online. Nadine is one of my collaborators, also in the audience, and we've seen that the HCI community is sort of happy to give data sets, for example, and sort of happy to use the results or share experiences. So, like I want to say, as like an answer to Simon, yes, HCI I think is a great community to tie up to, and personal assistance from that perspective. I mean, personal assistance is of course goes back way longer, but it's now I think a time to sort of get back to some of those ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, and Andre.
Yes, thank you. So I will just add a quick comment because I know we are running short on time. And I will come with perhaps a more positive comment, so building on some of the points that Alessandro was making. We discussed a lot about AI and different technologies and so on, but for instance, if you look at the paper on deep learning from Nature, Jan LeCun and Geoff Hinton and Yoshi Abenjo, two of the factors that they identified for the success of deep learning did not really have to do with the theoretical foundations, right? So it was about the advent of general purpose computation on GPUs, which brought a speed up of 10-fold for training large neural networks, and then simply the availability of data. So it's obviously also a question of timing, right? And what we've seen in the past few years, and this goes back to the Dutch Tool seminar and talking to people in the web community, I've been mostly in between the MAS community, the Web of Things community, and the semantic web community. And now we see people from the web community starting to look at ways to build more sophisticated clients. So clients that can be interacting in a more dynamic way with various web services. Why? Because now we can build web services that extend to the physical world. So in the semantic web paper, in the initial vision, agents were a big part of that vision, but also so were web-enabled devices. We did not get web-enabled devices until a few years ago. So this is the positive view that I would like to bring, that also it's a matter of timing. And it seems like we see multiple things that are now coming to maturity. And now we see people from the web community that are starting to look at things like how do we build hypermedia clients. And then if you look at the abstractions that they are conceiving of, they are not so far from some of the agent architectures that we might have proposed in the past. But then, of course, to bridge this gap between the communities, that is the hard task to do. And it's not just research, it's also a social endeavor and so on. So, yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Some excellent points. So I'll try and wrap up and summarize some of the points that were made. And I think one of them you just mentioned is the idea of other communities tackling similar problems, not necessarily being aware of what we have to contribute. And there was a paper I put in the chat that was published in 2009 that bemoaned this very issue in the context of service-oriented computing, I think, where they were sort of redeveloping solutions to things that we'd already solved, but doing it badly and being ignorant of the work. So I think this idea of building links between communities is not a new one, and there's natural sort of up and down, and various initiatives have been tried and with varying degrees of success. And Jorge mentioned Agent Link as one of those. So I think we started the panel with Pınar talking about this idea of effectively steady progress that has been made. So the research agenda might not have changed, but sort of we've built on top of successes. And then Alessandro came in and said, yeah, it's a steady state, and maybe the time is right for a change, given all the stuff that's happening in the world, both research and industry, in particular around AI. Now, timing, as Andre said, is everything, and I'm not sure whether now is the right time or not. There are signs either way. So AI for quite a while recently has been very much machine learning, deep learning, which is not a natural link for us, but there are signs of increasing focus on social AI. Which of course does lead directly to the EMAS community more broadly, and to our community. We start thinking about the engineering challenges. Community links, building links between community, that is hard. And one of the challenges is that we have to convince other communities that it's worthwhile engaging with us and give them the opportunity and the forum. And I think there have been some excellent comments that relate to the future of EMAS as an event and how that might run. So perhaps moving a little bit away, I mean, keeping papers, but sort of focusing more on that sort of opportunity, make it attractive as a forum where people can engage, interact, share experiences, demonstrate things, and even perhaps work together. So more of a Dankeschön model where instead of us having individual papers, we work together and produce something at the end. And again, that's also been done previously. I think one of the challenges for us, and it's also an opportunity, the digital format is very useful for bringing people in because you don't need to travel, you don't need funding, so it's a lot more inclusive. On the other hand, it's not a great format for that more digital type experience of collaborating closely and interacting. So how do we sort of do stuff digitally but also allow for interaction? Or do we just say, look, the interaction has to be face to face, and then naturally that will unfortunately limit the people who can attend? And I think finally the idea of challenge problems is a really good one. I know other communities have done things where they define a problem, and then for an upcoming event, people sort of try and bring their techniques and their technologies to bear on that problem. And as Rim mentioned, smart cities might be a really great one to tackle. So I'd just like to thank, so there was a question in the chat, are there future Dagstuhls being planned? And maybe we can have one Dagstuhl per year. I'm not aware of Dagstuhls being planned, but they're not sort of centrally planned. So it might be that someone sitting in this meeting does have a Dagstuhl proposal under consideration or is planning to put one in. I realise we're out of time, so the session was recorded, and it was really fantastic discussion, and certainly a number of members of the EMAS steering committee are present, and certainly I think have been listening to the discussion and participating in it as well. So I'd just like to finish by thanking everyone, in particular our three panelists with their fantastic thoughts, but also everyone else who spoke, who brought ideas, agreement, disagreement, and perspectives to this discussion, and everyone who took the time to be here. And I realize it's not necessarily a great time of the day for everyone. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you at the rest of this EMAS and in future events, be they Dagstuhl-like conferences, online or face-to-face, hopefully next year.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you
Very much for running
for
this panel, and thanks to all the panelists on behalf